Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. Pray you all well, alhamdulillah. Hope you had a good day yesterday with your family and your friends, and that all accepts everybody's efforts during this past month. Uh, Alhamdulillah, totally different Ramadan to last year this time, subhanAllah. Um, but we're glad for the ni'mah that Allah has given us. Alhamdulillah. So today we are here with Dr. Mujib again, alhamdulillah, and we'll be discussing the spiritual personality once again. And this time we're speaking specifically about emotional well-being and the spiritual personality. And that's today's session. And then tomorrow morning's session will be with Mu'alima Rushan, and she'll be talking about sustaining this spiritual personality until next Ramadan. So going into the next year with a newfound sense of identity and inshallah using it to better ourselves. Um, Otherwise, Dr. Mujib, Bismillah.
Shafika, could you let me know you see my screen?
Yes, all good, Doctor.
Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا مولانا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Indeed, once again.
Sorry, Dr. Mujib, there's some disturbance. There's some disturbance on your sound.
The sound.
Yeah, some crackling going on.
Okay. I'm not sure. Everything seems fine here. Is it still like that?
Yeah. Okay, Bismillah, go ahead.
Try to put in the earphones and mic. You can just let me know if it works better.
Okay.
Is there any difference?
Okay, Dr. Mujib, Bismillah. I think it's better.
Is it better?
Yes, the crackling is gone. Great.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay. Firstly, I would like to extend a heartfelt Eid Mubarak to one and all. I hope that the Eid was a good day of celebration of completing the blessed month of Ramadan, and also the celebration of refining the spiritual personality. We know that through the series, we aim to create awareness of the spiritual personality with one objective for refinement and improvement. And in line with today's theme, we want to carry on the spiritual personality from one Ramadan to the next. So today we will highlight the spiritual personality in the context of emotional well-being. And we again remind that spirituality is an important aspect in the lives of human beings globally. And we find all communities are connected to spirituality. And within the context of Islam, we find that every act that we do throughout our day for any benefit in our life has a spiritual consequence. So in other words, the Quran and the Sunnah guides us on how to perform those day-to-day acts in the best spiritual manner. And when we are connected to spirituality in form of community rituals, in the form of daily rituals, in the form of identity, we find that it gives us certain coping mechanisms. It allows us to understand the world better. It renews our sense of meaning and purpose. It enhances a feeling of belonging. Ultimately, every human being has this need to belong to your family, to a community. And at a bigger level, to be connected to our Creator. So spirituality, it maximizes our personal potential. It allows us to improve our relationships because through developing our spiritual personality, we challenge ourselves. We try to fend off the weak aspect of our temperaments. So we know once you have the knowledge of temperament, we acknowledge that it comes with strengths and weaknesses. And whilst emotions are felt by all people, if we look at it through the lens of temperament, you'll see that certain individuals are inclined to certain types of emotions more often. And this has a direct link to our spirituality, because depending on how well we connected spiritually, it will be directly proportionate to our well-being, to our emotional well-being. So we find there's a positive relationship. The more we involved in spiritual activities, the more well we feel. It increases our feeling of wellness, it increasing our feeling of resilience. We are able to understand life's challenges and we are able to rise above the challenges. So spirituality allows us to dig deep. It allows us to bring the strength and the resilience of the human nature to the fore. And ultimately, it helps us to effectively manage our emotions. It builds a capacity for us to face life's challenges, the ups and the downs. And challenges can present in any way. It can be financial challenges, health issues, environmental issues. But the way we view these challenges is very important. So, like we'll find through the study of behaviors that life is about perspective, how we view our position in life. And spirituality allows us to be grounded, but yet in touch with the Creator. And that gives us a sense of strength. And there's been no better time for that to be established in the month of Ramadan. So the objective is to zone in and look at what the month of Ramadan brought to us and how did it allow our temperaments, our spiritual personality connected to our temperaments to thrive. And then we hope to carry on with this till the next Ramadan. So through the discussion of temperament, also linked to this discussion of the spiritual personality, we know that we are all different. We all view life through our own lens, which is influenced by our upbringing. So the parenting styles of our parents, the environment we grew up in, but most important, your temperament. What is your temperament? And that will tell you a lot about how you view the world. So, and how you grew up. The opportunities, were there opportunities for your temperament to thrive? If not, how did you overcome those challenges? So throughout our lives, we are trying to adapt our temperament to the environment. And the understanding of temperament is very important for our spiritual personality. Because if we understand the way we operate, the way we think, the way we behave, and how it's linked to our temperament, we are able to make better choices that will guide us to maximize the full potential of our spiritual personality. And ultimately, by understanding the spiritual personality and understanding the personality of others, we are able to promote a society of emotional well-being. Because often we see that in many cases, in many communities, the emotional wellness, mental wellness are all important topics that's being highlighted. And it's topics that are under, these are topics that are not adequately spoken about. We don't speak about emotions enough. And probably because it's a hidden thing, you can't really see, and it's easy to mask our emotions. When we ask somebody, how are you doing? We always say, Alhamdulillah, I'm well, but are we really well? And if not, what do we do to find a place of wellness, or how do we get there? So we'll talk about some of those aspects today, and we'll link it onto the temperament of of each person, of mainly the 4 temperaments, and we'll speak about the spiritual personality as a recap as well. So from this model, which is based on the work done by the Yaqeen Institute, we see that the spiritual personality consists of 2 components. There is knowledge and deeds. So at any given time, every human being would be thinking about something, thinking about doing something, assessing things. There's different paths. We are presented with different options throughout the day. And what goes on in our mind determines what we are going to do. And from this model, we see that the spiritual personality consists of knowledge and deeds. And from there are 4 spiritual personality that would approach knowledge and deeds in a different manner. So knowledge can be experienced through different states. Knowledge can also be taught and experienced through its rulings and its boundaries and its on the form of judgment. When it comes to deeds, one could practice good deeds, or one could refrain from bad deeds. And from this we have 4 personality types that prefer certain ways to approach knowledge and certain ways to approach deeds. And when we superimpose this model on that of temperaments, we see it fits perfectly. So we said that the temperament is a combination of one's physical characteristics, one's mental, emotional, and spiritual attributes. So by knowing your temperament, you actually know quite a bit about yourself, because it assesses your strengths and your weaknesses, and it allows you to recognize your predispositions. And when we speak about predispositions, we don't only speak about like physical illnesses, we also speak about emotional illnesses, because all 4 temperaments would be inclined to certain emotional excesses. So knowing your temperament is very important when it comes to managing your emotions and when it comes to understanding your spiritual personality. And the spiritual personality and emotions are very closely linked. You would find there's a direct link between our level of spirituality and our level of happiness. So studies done on populations found that those people that pray together, that's connected to a community of spirituality, that finds opportunity for spiritual growth, those communities thrive better. The overall function of the family is improved in those communities, because each individual would be guided on how to conduct themselves and how to improve themselves. And spirituality within Islam is all about growth. It's all about rising above the lower self towards the angelic self. So constantly you will find in the Quran and the Sunnah it guides one towards that. And knowing your spiritual personality allows that journey to become much more easier. So let's talk about emotions, and let's talk about what effect emotions have on our life. So often we find ourselves in a community where emotions is not the favorite topic. There's negative stereotypes regarding people that are emotionally unwell. And the term counseling is a very scary term for most people. If you mention that I think you might need some counseling, that it's already the sound of it makes one feel that there's something wrong with me. But we have to acknowledge that we live in a society that doesn't really protect people's emotions. There's very little that's done out there to actually promote courtesy amongst people, unless you are following a way of life that guides you towards it. And if you look at in the Quran and the Sunnah, you'll find that the entire Sunnah is about courtesy. It's about good adab. It's about having a high opinion of people. It's about uplifting people. It's about taking care of what you say, how you say it. So today we find that emotional wellness is a huge topic amongst health professionals, because we acknowledge that every illness has an emotional layer. So whether you have a cold and flu or something more severe like a chronic condition or a terminal condition, how you feel has everything to do with your healing process. And without a doubt, those that can manage their emotions have a higher or better quality of life. So when we are stressed, when we are worried, when we are when we overcome with anger, with envy, with so if you think about any negative emotion, when it's left for too long and it's left unresolved, it has a negative effect on the body. And the area of the body or the place where most of the harm takes place would be in the brain and in the mind, the central nervous system. And that two components happen to be the components that govern the way we function. So when we are stressed, when we find ourselves going through the same emotions over and over, and it sometimes grows. And when I'm talking about growing, I'm thinking about these negative emotions that, resentment or anger or hate or envy or hurt, any type of emotional trauma. It activates the fight and flight response in our body. So we undergo a type of coping mechanism that's in place for when the body undergoes stress. But when it's there for too long, it creates certain physiological changes. These are some listed here. That it affects our breathing, it affects blood flow in the body, it affects our heart rates, our sugar levels, the blood pressure. When you're in a state of stress, it affects the way your digestion functions, your bowel movements. It can lead to indigestion problems, into heartburn, flatulence, bloating, stomach cramps, stomach pain. And in other individuals, there would be other problems. So without a doubt, there's enough research to show that if you are suffering any type of emotional trauma and it's unresolved, it has a direct physiological effect on the body. So it can lead to other illnesses of the physical body. And today we find a cycle of unresolved emotions, of fear, stress, like chronic fatigue syndrome that carries on and it affects the body. And if you are living an unhealthy lifestyle alongside that, so meaning there's no exercise, there's not a good diet, and you're going through tough emotions, the body takes a real toll. And then it becomes a vicious cycle because going through certain emotions is not easy to resolve on your own. And people find themselves trapped in the cycle of thinking about it, then becoming stressed. And that stress prevents them from functioning properly in other aspects of their life. And that causes more stress. And as the stress builds more, you go back and relive those negative events again, and it just carries on like that. And ultimately, it weakens the immune system. So the ability for the body to fight illnesses starts to decrease. So in the field of psychoneuroimmunology, it clearly shows the interconnection between our minds, the central nervous system, and the body. All three are interconnected. So what we think has everything to do with our body's immune system. So within prophetic medicine, Tiba Nabawi, we'll find that under discussion of emotions, the first one, the most important one, would be that of anger. And anger is described as a very harmful emotion. It's a natural emotion, but it's very harmful when it is not contained, when it is not understood, when it's not worked through, when it's not extinguished or neutralized. So unresolved anger, for instance, is something that can harm the individual. And your anger might be justified. You're feeling it for a specific reason. There's a cause, whether it's injustice, whether it's something that was done to you unfairly in any other way. But ultimately, when you feel the anger, you are the only one that is suffering the pain. Because the feeling of anger, as the Sunnah describes it, is a quality of the shaitan. It comes from the fire. And therefore you'll see anger in itself has all the characteristics of fire, in that it starts in the middle of the belly and it starts to heat up. And when somebody becomes angry, they rise up. You find that the skin becomes red, the eyes become red, the heart rate starts to race. Generally, the body becomes heated. And then when the person does not act on things to cool down the anger, you start to utter things that you cannot take back. So irreversible things. So once things, and most of us know that whatever we say in anger is not truly who we are. It is bringing up an aspect of ourselves that is very low, that we are not proud of, that we wish we can control. So without a doubt, every temperament does feel anger, but for the bilious people, anger is something that is particularly difficult for them to control because they are bilious in nature, and so they have this quality of fire. So the quality of fire brings about all the energizing, the inspiring, the positive qualities, but it can also bring out negative qualities. So for them, anger is one aspect that they have to control. So if you look within prophetic medicine from Tibba Nabawi, the advices of the Prophet ﷺ, we find he gave ample advice regarding anger. And particularly for the one Sahaba that came to ask him, Ya Rasulullah, give me advice, the Prophet ﷺ said simply, do not become angry. Because the Prophet ﷺ knew temperaments. He knew that that advice should be given that's suitable for the individual. And then the Prophet ﷺ spoke about anger in the context of strength. And he said that he asked the Sahaba one day, what do you consider to be a powerful or strong person? And then somebody responded, is it somebody that is the Sahaba responded that a strong person would refer to somebody's strength, physical strength that can throw people to the ground. And then the Prophet said no, that true strength or true power is the one who is able to master himself or herself when angry. And within the hadith of Tirmidhi, we see the Prophet ﷺ informed us that the best of you are those who are slow to anger and swift to cool down. Because anger is like a live coal in the hearts of men. So in the hearts of the children of Adam, anger is like a live coal. So the Prophet ﷺ described it as an aspect of fire. The Prophet ﷺ taught us that when we feel anger coming on, we should seek refuge in Allah from the shaitan. And it can prevent the anger from growing, and it can allow the anger to go away. The Prophet also informed us that when one becomes angry and you are standing, sit down. Because sitting down means that you are trying to cool yourself. You're moving closer to the earth. You're trying to become grounded. Because what does anger do? It heats you up and it moves you to, it rises. It causes you to aggress. It causes you to utter things. So when you become angry and you retract, that's a very strong commitment to decrease your anger. And if you're able to do that, it will assist. If one of you become angry, then it's best to be silent. And we know this is very difficult to do because there's so much to say. You want to stand up for yourself. But mixed with that rights that you have would be anger. And when anger is mixed with it, it starts to soil it. It starts to make it less coming from a true place and more from a place of revenge. So during the month of Ramadan, we find that we were allowed to be in a position that allows us to control our anger better. So the month of Ramadan just presented that things that would normally bother us out of the month of Ramadan, we could tolerate in the month of Ramadan. And it's all because of our fasting. It's all because of the spirit of Ramadan. So how do we carry on with this? The important aspect is to firstly acknowledge our anger, acknowledge the cause of it, acknowledge the individuals connected to it. And through that, also know that the Sunnah advises on what to do. And it's not just following the advices directly with the Prophet ﷺ. When you are angry, it's also seeking assistance professionally. So in the form of counseling, because the matter has to be addressed. So it's not just you do all the Sunnah and you forget that there's an aspect towards the Sunnah that also guides us to seek assistance from health professionals. Prophet ﷺ would go to health professionals for all of his needs, but he would also make dua, and he would also ask Allah for his needs, and he'd also rely on the Quran as a healing. So we follow that method. We take all of his advices, and we also seek the professional help, because that is in line with the Sunnah. Seeking professional help is needed. It is part of our reliance on Allah, because Allah has given us cures through various methods. Cures in this dunya is not confined to a tablet. It can exist in an experience. It can exist in a dua. It can exist between people. It is found in good adab. It is found in courtesy. It is found in anything that resembles the Sunnah. There is a form of healing. And you'll find that those people that are very connected to the Sunnah, they can control their anger, because it is something that they've been trained towards. They've been adopting things on a day-to-day basis. And one other remedy the Prophet ﷺ gave to anger is also the wudu. We know in the Sunnah, hydrotherapy is recognized as healing with water. So performing the wudu with the intention to also cool down your anger can assist you with that. And during the month of Ramadan, another big aspect that we were trying to imbibe within ourselves would be that of forgiveness. And we know that the Quran and the Sunnah describes Allah's forgiveness as being one that's connected to our ability to forgive. So if we want Allah to forgive us, it is expected of us to forgive others. But this is easier said than done. So what happens when you suffer at the hands of others and you struggle to forgive? Those that struggle to forgive, they extend their pain longer than that's needed. So when you struggle to actually let go of something, holding on to it is more harmful to you than letting go. Often we think that if we forgive somebody, we let them off the hook, then it's giving them a free ride. But studies have shown that those people are able to forgive, they're actually healing themselves, because holding on to something causes you to relive that thing, to think about it. And whenever you relive something, in your mind's eye, you see that event taking place again, it elicits certain responses in your body. So think about dreaming. When you sleep at night and you have a dream, whether it's a good or bad dream, because your mind's eye sees pictures and it's actually happening, your body responds to it as if it's real. So your heart rate races, your heart rate increases, you start to sweat, depending on what's happening in the dream. But when you wake up, you realize that it was only a dream, but you still feel the effects on your body. So likewise, when we struggle with anger, when we struggle with forgiveness, resentment, when we replay emotional traumatic events in our lives, it brings about that same physiological impact. So it affects the heart, it affects the mind, it affects the hormones, the blood pressure, the sugar levels. And for those people that are unable to resolve these aspects, they live with us on a day-to-day basis. So become chronic sufferers of emotional trauma. And forgiveness is one of those aspects that allows us to heal. So it's not that we shouldn't seek justice, that we shouldn't seek the necessary help to get back what is ours. But the important part of it is to forgive, because when you forgive, you allow a healing to take place in your body that moves you to a better space. So definitely, without a doubt, the month of Ramadan came to teach us forgiveness, came to make our hearts softer. And the only purpose for that is to benefit ourselves. The Quran and the Sunnah, we know that The Quran, Allah says, "In ahsantum ahsantum li anfusikum," that whatever good you do, it is for yourself only. So any good that you do, when it comes to forgiving people, seemingly it's something you're letting someone off the hook, but you're actually letting yourself off the hook. You're being kind to yourself, because your inability to forgive is a type of torture. So definitely, forgiveness is not something that we do for other people. We do it for ourselves to get well and to carry on and to move on. There are those individuals that struggle to forgive, and that they literally live a life of bitterness. The inability to forgive withers them away. You see them lose their will, you see them lose their light, you see them go down a dark path, and only they suffer. So the people that, or the person that the resentment is directed towards, doesn't actually feel anything, but the person that carries it. So it's very important for us to not carry these things, to understand that anything that upsets us and it's not resolved, we carry it, and it has an effect on our wellness. And ultimately, it has an effect on our spirituality also. So the first one to apologize is considered the bravest one. The first one to forgive is the strongest one. And the first one to forget is the happiest one. So on a healing and hurting scale, definitely those that are closer to forgiveness would be on the path of healing. The month of Ramadan also came to teach us about generosity, that giving, the acts of service. And it taught us that we cannot consider ourselves Muslim if we are not benefiting others. If our lives on this earth is not towards the betterment of other people in any form, there's many forms. You can contribute in many ways. And it's very important to link your contribution to your temperament. Because when you do that, you find a sense of fulfillment that allows the spiritual personality to grow. So definitely acts of service is connected to various temperaments, and when people do things for others, there's various benefit to it. But the biggest benefit is that it creates a sense of emotional wellness. Because in the act of giving, in the act of generosity, you are part of something very special. And being part of that is a benefit for yourself more than the one who receives. So during the month of Ramadan, there were many aspects that allows us to think better, to improve our mental alertness. We were given opportunity to practice on our patience, on our willpower, our will to resist things. Ramadan was a conducive time for that. It allows us to dig deeper. It allows us to become better human beings. It allows us to connect with our families better and our communities. So now we'll go into the discussion of the different temperaments again, and we'll focus on the emotions. And we'll also talk about the spiritual personality. And the whole objective of this is to highlight what emotions would be on top of the list for each temperament, and how do we deal with that, and how can we contribute to emotional wellness after Ramadan. Okay, so we're talking about the sanguine individual, the extrovert, the optimistic one, the natural orator. So they optimistic people. So they always have a positive thing to say, or a positive outlook in life. They enjoy show and tell. They're very enthusiastic, expressive. They present things with great passion. They're full of curiosity. They have a sense of adventure about them. They're sincere-hearted individuals. They also have a childish heart in terms of they're very playful in nature. So they're the ones that would volunteer to do work. They like to try new activities. They're very creative and innovative. There's a lot of energy coming from a sanguine individual. However, when they undergo too much stress, then worry becomes an aspect that they struggle with. They tend to they lose that positive spark. So if you're a sanguine individual and you find yourself in a position whereby you can't see the silver lining anymore, it means that there's some type of imbalance in your life. And it can most likely be linked to emotions. But there are other aspects that you should also know that contributes to emotions. So your spirituality, are you spiritually growing daily? Are you physically active? Because that adds to your emotional well-being. What are you consuming? Are you expressing the correct acts of service that's connected to your spiritual personality, for instance? So the sanguine people, they are skilled communicators. They have this deep passion to change the world. So for them, to be at the center of community is important. Whether it's in a family paradigm, whether it's in a school, whether it's in charity, they need to be at the center there, pulling people together, the hub. So therefore, you'll find them in position of life coaches, teachers, orators, public speakers. They perform these roles quite well. So the spiritual personality of the sanguine is linked around the matters of the heart, bringing people together, being diplomatic. They have a keen sense of saying the correct things to people to make them feel well. So the strength that they have is that they warm-hearted, they're very pleasant, optimistic. They have an apologetic heart. The sanguine person finds it very easy to forgive. But when they find themselves in the position that they cannot forgive, they could delve in that area for too long. And eventually it affects their personality. It affects their ability to be social. It affects their zest for life, their positive outlook. And it could lead them to the weaknesses of their temperament, which is around being self-absorbed, being isolated, being very impulsive, forgetful, easily distracted. They cannot focus during spiritual personality. They cannot focus during spiritual activities. And also connected to the emotion is that they can become superficial regarding things. That's when they are suffering emotional distress. And at this time, you will find that the sanguine person will find it very difficult to resist the senses. So during the time of emotional trauma, they'll give in to all the senses. They will overindulge, and that will bring about other negative aspects like envy, temptation, jealousy, rivalry. So when we look at the training for the spiritual personality of a sanguine person, you'll see it revolves around aspects of fasting like self-denial, to not give in to all your favorites all the time. So the sanguine personality, when it comes to emotions, it's important to keep that balance. So this balance required for the physical body, for the mental, for the mind, and for spirituality. And it's a fine balance to keep. And for the sanguine person undergoing emotional distress, they'll have to look at all three aspects and manage it well. If you look at the phlegmatic person, like water, they're very easygoing. They're sociable, quite calm and relaxed. They're consistent. They're very faithful people. They're loyal. They'll follow their leader. They'll support. But also very important for them, they are introverts. They can be pessimistic. They can stand at the back and be the observer for most of the time. They also need their acknowledgement. They also need to be cared for the way they care for others. And when that is not given to them, you'll find that they can move into a state of sadness very easily. But the sanguine, the phlegmatic person, they're the natural born counselors of society. People are naturally attracted to them for their softness, for their refinedness, for their subtleness. And they're the guardians of society. They want to protect people. They want to protect families. They want to protect the elderly. They're very good at social work, development, at upliftment. And when these individuals undergoing emotional trauma or distress, it's important for them to still be connected to these things, because these things give them hope and fulfillment. So for the spiritual personality of the phlegmatic person, it revolves around matters of the heart. It revolves around kindness and caring and humanity. So during the month of Ramadan, they would be the ones that's very active when it comes into charitable work. They want to hand over the charity to the person and look in their eyes when they give it. So those gestures, acts of service, they're very empathetic people, very thoughtful, friendly. So communication is high on their list. So the weaknesses that a phlegmatic person suffer is the fear of change. And when there's sudden change in their lives, it disrupts them, it throws them out, they struggle to adapt, and it can cause severe emotional distress. And so for these individuals, if they don't watch the emotions, they can go down a road of listlessness where they lose their zest because the phlegmatic temperament is connected to water and water is cold and moist. They need a lot to heat them up. So when they're going through a tough time, it's easy for them to oversleep. It's easy for them to overeat, to deal with any emotional trauma, because those would be the go-to things, what's more convenient to do. But ultimately, it doesn't fill that gap. It doesn't address any emotional issues. So counseling for them is very important. Being in good company is very important. Being in the presence of people that speak good words. On the slide, I have a term, the avoid the losers. When you're going through your emotional distress, definitely avoid the losers. Avoid people that break you down. Avoid people that just speaks negatively. There's many people out there that when they speak, they don't watch what they say, and often people get offended, and it's a serious problem because the Sunnah is all about courtesy, good adab. It's all about making people feel better for seeing you. Your presence should be something that leaves something positive with somebody. And if it doesn't, rather don't say anything. That's what the Sunnah teaches us. So when the phlegmatic person is going through emotional trauma, they need to be surrounded by good people. They needed to be uplifted. So praying with people is important. Going to dhikr together is important. Listening to inspirational talks. What you listen to is also very important because every religious sermon might not be the best one for you, because behind that is somebody giving over the information through their lens. What is that lens? Is it a lens of punishment? Are they well balanced in their speech? Are they giving you hope? There's some people that teach Islam through the fire. Some people teach Islam through love. Some people teach Islam through courtesy and good adab. And depending on which method you choose, it has effect on you. And you'll see certain people that follow a certain way, they have a certain about them. So for the phlegmatic individual, going through emotional distress, definitely spiritual personality is a place to focus on. But because you are a community person, because you are connected to matters of the heart, you need to be surrounded by people that can give you that. So seek the good company. Focus on things that will inspire you. Be part of charitable events, even though you might not be in that space, because once you're in that space, you start to heat up. You start to look at things a bit differently. So sometimes we know something might be good for us, but it's hard for us to get there. At that time, you just have to push through. Just think about, I might just get there, and once I'm there, it will be okay. So self-talk is also very important for our temperament. What we tell ourselves, our bodies believe, our bodies react to it. So each temperament has to acknowledge that there's certain words of affirmation that you need to carry on. Melancholic personality are those people that are introverts, deep thinkers. They're very philosophical, very analytical. They are creative. They are artistic individuals. They tend to be very serious. They're diligent people. They're schedule-orientated perfectionists. They're very persistent, very careful, disciplined, and organized. They're orderly and neat. They very to themselves. They often exist in their minds. So they're thinking a lot and they're thinking deeply. And the questions they ask, people would wonder why they think about this. Why would you go so deep into matters? That's the melancholic mind. They're not very interested in the superficial. They need to know deeper things, the source of knowledge. And like that, they also feel deep. So they hang on to words. For some individuals to just say something is easy. It's you say it now, it's gone. But for the melancholic people, they hold on to it. So certain things that would fly by others, the melancholic person would take note of it. They take note of details. And that is a good and a bad thing. It's good in that they don't miss anything, but the bad thing is they could pick up things that's not there. So because a melancholic person could be pessimistic in nature, and some melancholics are pessimistic in nature as a safety mechanism. I rather expect something bad, so when it happens, I knew it was coming, as opposed to thinking good about everything. But out of that 9 out of 10 scenarios that could go wrong, none of it really never happens. So sometimes a melancholic person can live in fear for something that will never happen. And it becomes habit, and daily they analyze their lives according to risks, and they live according to that risk. And that creates an emotional turmoil for the melancholic person. So because they're a deep thinker, because they love the creative process, they love inspiration, brainstorming, vision, and ideas, they should be guided in that direction. So all the energy that allows him to focus should be done in a positive manner. And there's various ways of reaching that in forms of spirituality, in forms of academia, in forms of the art. But when it's properly directed, you'll find that the melancholic person can be a very deep worshipper. They can find depth in their prayer because they're naturally deep people. So when it comes to times of being silent and you have to focus and reflect, they do that very well. They find a deeper message in everything. They can see it in religious texts, in ahadith, they can see it in nature. So this is when they're living in line with the angelic self, the higher level of themselves. They tend to be very sentimental people. They value the important, the signs of Allah, the things that's very important in Islam, that's icons of Islam. They revere those things. So the strength of the melancholic person is that they're very thoughtful, very deep. The weaknesses is that they could be too cautious. They can be prone to moodiness and pessimistic behavior. They are prone to play the martyr, to, like sacrifice everything for everyone, because that's what they would like other people to do for themselves. And often they pay so much attention to detail that they would present things in the most perfect manner to people, because that's how they would like that to be presented to them. And when it's not presented to them in the same way, they take it very personally. So we have to also remind ourselves that we all live our lives through our temperaments, but we should understand the perspective of all temperaments, so that when we address people, when we assist people, we treat that and we address them through their temperaments also. So when it comes to the emotional distress found in melancholic people, it's connected to aspects of their lives that they didn't see coming. So the melancholic person longs for this perfect order, and they like things to be predictable. And when things don't fall in place, it can cause severe distress. And when a melancholic heart and mind goes down the road of darkness, they can get stuck there. So it can come about through various things. It could come about through grief, through hurt, through resentment. But the melancholic person, when they find themselves in this dark road, a red flag should go up that I need to seek help. I need to seek help from people around me, through the deen, through professional counseling. Because a melancholic person, when they find themselves in a in the road of pessimism, when they find themselves in the road of hopelessness, it's very hard for them to climb out alone. So during the month of Ramadan, we find that there were various aspects of the month that instill hope in us, that reminds us that Allah's mercy is more than His wrath. It reminds us that when we take one step to Allah, He runs towards us. And a melancholic person, because they aim for perfection, when they are unable to reach their own perceptions of themselves, it causes severe guilt. It causes a feeling of worthlessness, a low confidence, low self-esteem. So the melancholic people, out of all the temperaments, they're probably the most hardest on themselves. Whilst the other temperaments, like the sanguine person, will be much more easy on themselves. They're always letting themselves off the hook. They're the ones that are advised to be more serious about things and to take stock or to reflect more. For the melancholic person, that's not needed. The melancholic person has to be reminded that they should be easy on themselves. So inspiring them with hope. And it's not easy just when somebody's sad, you tell them, don't be sad. A famous one is that you just make a dua, then you'll be okay. There's power in dua, but there's also power in all the aspects that the Sunnah presents. So it's not only one part that we take, we have to adopt the Sunnah holistically. So we make the dua for healing, but we also look towards professional help that guides us on how to deal with these emotions. And often these emotions that's long-standing, that took place when you were young, and it follows us through life. It just grows. And people with a melancholic nature might think that it happened a long time ago. I'll just leave it shut somewhere in a closet. But later in life, it resurfaces. Or on a daily basis in the subconscious, it affects the mind of the melancholic person. So very important to know that every illness that you face with, whether it's an emotional one, a spiritual one, or a mental one, every illness has a cure. A hadith comes to mind, Prophet said, "Ma anzalallahu min da'in illa anzala lahu shifa." That Allah has not sent down any condition to mankind except that He has also sent down its cure. So whatever you're feeling, whatever you're struggling with, the cure lies around us. And it's just for you to tap into that. It's just for you to reach out. And melancholic people are those type of people that wouldn't necessarily reach out. They would try to hide their pain. And for good reason, because exposing your pain to the wrong people can be harmful. So therefore, the melancholic person needs somebody they can trust. And often the high level of perfection prevents them from finding anybody because we're all flawed. And that also causes greater stress for the melancholic person, especially when they find some flaw in the individual or somebody they admired. Then it creates the stress that they wouldn't want to follow this person anymore. So the melancholic person has to be reminded that the human nature is a flawed one, but things can be corrected. That Allah says that His mercy is that overpowers His wrath. And one of the hardest parts for a melancholic person to overcome is when they fall into sin. So when they do something wrong, they're very severe on themselves, especially when it's the more severe the sin is, the more further away the melancholic person feels from the Creator. And they feel the gap being extended so far that they can't come back. So the melancholic person has to be inspired with hope. And the teacher, the life coach, the counselor of the melancholic person has to be extremely patient and has to be extremely sensitive and wary of the fact that the melancholic person feels deeply. And because they feel so deep, they will take longer to get through issues. And so it's very important, whoever counsels them, that they offer that space to allow them to just be, where a space where they can just say that I feel like this, no matter how it is, I feel hopeless. I feel to say that I don't believe Allah's going to help me. That's okay for now. It's okay to feel like that. It's okay to feel hopeless. You're not out of the fold if you feel like that. But there's ways we can get you to feel better. There's ways that you can be uplifted. So it's not that we find that also some had moments of hopelessness. He had moments of sadness. He had a whole year of sadness when he lost his loved ones. And he lost many loved ones. And one would ask, why would the best of creation go through so much pain? It's to show us the ideal model of how you deal with pain. So the wonderful thing about our lives is that when we follow the Sunnah, there is a remedy for everything that we struggle with. So for the melancholic heart, understand that whatever distresses you can be cured. Understand that Allah's hope, Allah's mercy is much more than His anger. If you fell into something, there is forgiveness beyond our imagination. One thing comes to mind that a famous scholar said, come back 100 times, come back. So that's Allah telling us that no matter how many times you find yourself with difficulty or trying to overcome something, He's there to wait for you. So the take-home message for the melancholic person is that of hope. So tazkiyah, uplifting the melancholic heart with regards to emotions would be connecting to all these ayat, to connect to nature. The melancholic person finds great joy in nature because nature, there's certain parts of nature that reminds of Allah's perfection. So gardens, seeing the ocean, seeing flowers, touching the flowers, gardening, for instance, the melancholic person, they do very well with gardening because they're connected to the element of earth. So part of the well-being when it comes to emotion would be to adopt some type of activity that involves gardening, growing, seeing something transform from nothing to a fruit, for instance. That all does a lot for the emotions. The choleric person, also known as a bilious person, would be the one that is connected to fire. So they are the very resourceful, dynamic, creative people. They have a strong will. They are very confident. They target and goal orientated. They're very fast acting people. They like to delegate. They feel often they are so resourceful that they don't feel that they need the help of others. They don't feel that they need much friends. But as leaders, they are very strong, they're very reliable, and they're very inspiring. So when they're living in line with a spiritual personality, they become the voice of justice. They speak up for people. They try to correct the ills of society. So you find that when they are working from a spiritual personality, they have a lot of empathy. They are very caring individuals. But with every temperament, there's a negative part also. So the one emotion that the bilious person suffer with is that of anger. And the bilious person, when they become angry, it becomes a intense type of anger. And it can easily become an explosive type of anger. And during that time, they can become aggressive, they can become domineering, inflexible, argumentative, very uncomfortable to be around. And at that time, they're very low on empathy. So the spiritual personality of the bilious person, when it's moving from the angelic self to the low self, you'll find that there's a lot of pride in the bilious person's heart that's connected to the lower self. There's a lot of arrogance because they start looking at their ability to do things and they think it's from themselves. And when this qualities exist in the people, you'll find that the level of anger is also high. So when anybody challenges them, when anybody insults them or humiliates them, you'll see a rage type of anger appears. And we spoke about earlier on that how the Sunnah speaks about that being a very negative part. So when it comes to the spiritual training for the bilious person, it's important that they learn how to manage their anger. And management of anger has many various components. You have to sometimes address the actual issue. Then you have to acknowledge that the bilious person in themselves, that they have a lot of fire. And there's various things that affect your heat in your body. And those things can be your physical activity, your sleep patterns, your diet. So those things can be worked on, but ultimately behavior is the thing. How do you manage irritability? What do you do? Uh, how do you calm yourself down? And we spoke about certain methods that the Sunnah brought about. So those are important to incorporate. But what do you do on a day-to-day level when it comes to these type of weaknesses in the temperament? So one thing that the books of Tib teaches us is that the Buddhist person should be actively involved in charity, because charity happens to soften the heart. Being involved with people closely in terms of handing over goods, attending to their needs. So there's different types of charity. The easiest charity is to do the EFT, uh, but the more difficult charity is to actually buy the goods and be part of the process. So part of anger management, part of controlling that heat that exists within the bilious person is to focus on charity, is to focus on fasting. So fasting, we know, there's many benefits to it. And after the month of Ramadan, we are encouraged to fast. We're encouraged to continue the fast. And the Mondays and Thursdays would be an excellent time to actually balance our week. And you'll find people that are following the Sunnah of fasting Monday to Thursday. They have a type of refinement about them. If I just think about a few people that come to my mind that I know that every Monday and Thursday this person will be fasting, they just have a type of calmness about them. And we will find that fasting is an amazing physical activity that has emotional effects, because it subdues the ego. Without a doubt, Ibn Ghazali explains it quite well in his Al-Ihya Ulumuddin. He says that the belly is the origin of all spiritual illness. He says that when the belly is full, then it leads on to other type of excesses. So when the belly is full, it leads on to lust, it leads on to wanting more things to amass. Then that leads on to looking at what others have, and then that causes envy, then it causes jealousy, then it causes hate, then it causes resentment. And there's an aspect of pride, because you are amassing so much, and through that you think it comes through your own hands. And Imam Ghazali actually links every spiritual illness to the belly. And he says that when the belly is empty, the spiritual self grows faster. So definitely in a state of fasting, there's a lot that can be learned. There's a lot that can be improved from an emotional perspective. Okay, so now that we've done a recap on the four temperaments and the spiritual personality, we're going to look at other aspects that will assist us in terms of emotional well-being. So when you're going through any type of emotion, there's things that's needed. You need to self-talk. So what you're telling yourself to get through this. And that means you'll have to know your temperament. You'll have to be your own coach at times. You have to tell yourself that because I'm phlegmatic or melancholic, when I go through this, I will probably delve long into it. If I continue this way, I'm going to go down a dark road. So what am I going to do? I have to reach out to people. It can be family members, it can be friends, it can be a respected person that in their company, they will give you good advice. So that would be like informal counseling. But then depending on the matter that you're struggling with, you will probably need professional counseling, and they can also be part of your healing. Then there's aspects from the sunnah that you can rely on. So there's dua, there's salah, there's wudu. Then other aspects of the sunnah would fall within this realm, recognizing that what we see, what we think about, what we smell has effect on our emotions. So if we look at the science of color therapy, we see that different colors has an effect on how we feel. So you have colors that are energizing. So when you see these colors in nature, when you see it in your home, when you wear these colors, it has an effect like yellows and green and red and orange. These are uplifting, warming, so to say, like positive colors. that that energizes you. Then cooling colors like blue, violet, these are colors that you'll wear when you don't want to be too excited. So, you want to find calmness in things. Then in the world of aromatherapy, we learn that every scent can bring about a change in the body. So a scent can uplift you, it can affect your mood. And so these scents are taken from plants. These are taken from plant oils, and these plant oils have medicinal value. So for every plant out there, there's a certain scent that it gives, and there's a certain aroma. And these scents can be applied to the temperament. So for each temperament, there's ideal scents. And the scent we can find in nature as botanical aromas, but also we can find it as perfumes, or we can find it as oils. For instance, like the attars that we wear, the oud and the amber and the musk and all the variations, you get different types of oud, and some would be more heating than others. So in temperament, we learn that each temperament has a certain quality connected to the body. So like the sanguine and the bilious people, they're heated in nature. The phlegmatic and melancholic are cooling in nature. And when we choose what colors or scents we want to use for emotional wellness, it should be in line with that. So depending on what you're feeling, there's different scents that will bring about a certain quality in the body. So for instance, like rosemary, citronella, anything with a citrus smell can be uplifting, stimulating, energizing. So when you need that mental alertness, when you want to be feeling on top of things, a more uplifting, heating scent is good. When you want to relax, something like lavender. So that's also something to research. If you look up different scents, if you go onto the TIB website, they will also give you some advice on which aromas are best suited for your temperament. So this is just to create some awareness on what avenues to tap into when it comes to dealing with emotional issues. So it's not only addressing the issues, not only going for the counseling, it's not only praying, making dua, practicing the sunnah. You can also rely on these things for day-to-day management. It's also important to note that with the seasons, there's different qualities that each season bring. And the seasons has an effect on emotions. So for those people that are cold in nature, so it'll be the melancholic and the phlegmatic people that they don't enjoy today's weather. The weather's quite overcast, cold, and rainy. For them, it's a bit too cold. So they should acknowledge that the weather has an effect on the emotions. So what do? You can't change the weather, but you can apply things internally. So having heating soups, heating teas, a heating rub on the skin, heating baths, applying certain oils to the bath, scents burning in the house, incense sticks or humidifiers. And so there's things that you can do to heat up the personality to deal with the coldness of the season, because sometimes the coldness of the season can impact on your emotions as well. Then within Tibba Nabawi, within Unani Tib, the practice of immortal medicine, you'll find there's a whole host of breathing exercises that one can do. And breathing exercises in today's time has become very popular when it comes to emotional problems, because when we're undergoing any type of emotional distress, it affects our breathing. So you'll find people that are generally anxious, they breathe very rapidly. So they breathe rapidly and very high. So they don't use the full lung capacity. And the quality of breath isn't good. So which means that the body isn't properly oxygenated. So the feeling of fatigue, the feeling of tiredness, of listlessness, exhaustion often accompanies anxiety. So there's a whole list of breathing exercises that's recommended. And if you go on the TIB website, there's good instructional guidelines to how to do this, but also online. So breathing exercises allows one to focus, to live in the here and the now. We find most emotional traumatic events causes people to live outside of the moment. So you might be enjoying comfort and peace, but your mind is in another place. And due to the emotional trauma, all your situations are traumatic. So at the moment, you're enjoying peace in your home. There's nothing really harmful happening to you at the moment. But in your mind, the emotional trauma is still taking place. So your body is still feeling like you're under attack. And that's where breathing exercises can help, because it's a form of settling the emotions and strengthening the nerves. It helps to integrate the mind and the body. Uh, it improves your blood circulation. It allows you to tap into your imagination and use it to ground or center yourself. So there's different types of breathing exercises. The slow and deep one would have a cooling effect of the body. The fast and deep one would have a more heating effect. Breathing exercises are often encouraged to do in the morning. So after Fajr is a good time to do it, especially when you're sitting on your musalla. That happens to be the most peaceful time of the day. It's a good time for you to center, to start your day off on a good note. So on the musalla, to sit in a certain position, um, make sure that there's no phones on or no technology on, and you're just allowed to think about your breathing, to breathe in and acknowledge that with every breath, every part of your body is oxygenated, energized. Yeah. And when you exhale, you actually exhale waste products from the body. And attached to that, you will find dhikr that can be attached to the breath. And dhikr done consciously can do a lot for the emotions. And we'll find for every type of emotional condition, there is a ideal dhikr to bring about some type of hope, like Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil, like the Asma al-Husna. Every name of Allah has tremendous spiritual and emotional uplifting qualities. And to utter certain names of Allah allows us to tap into those resources. So meditation exercises is very much part of our tradition. We'll find that the actual adhkar that we used to, like the Ratib al-Haddad and the different pujis, and all of that has a certain rhythm to it. And the rhythm is to be in line with a certain sound, but also to make us feel uplifted while we think about the meaning. So incorporating those type of aspects as part of our emotional wellness program is also very important, to do it on a day-to-day basis. An important aspect of your emotional wellness is exercise. We are meant to be moving all the time. When we stay stagnant for too long, it causes the heart to become stagnant. It takes away that feeling to carry on in a positive manner if we just sit. So anybody can improve the quality of life by exercise, anybody. And it doesn't mean that you have to have a strenuous exercise. It just means you have to be consistent. Even though you do a little, be consistent. And one of the best medicines to start off with is brisk walking, a daily walk in nature with for the purpose of exercise is brilliant. So you take that time out to do that, and you'll be amazed when you do that in nature, breathing in fresh air, what it does to the emotions. Often when we're going through traumatic events, we feel constricted. We feel that the world is closing in on us. And it's important for us to go out in nature, to be there and see the open sky, to see the open mountain, the open ocean. So visiting places of nature regularly is very important for your emotions, because ultimately we are made up of the same elements of nature. We are made up of clay, of water, air, of earth. And we find tremendous joy when we connect with that again. So sitting on grass, walking barefoot on sand, swimming in the ocean, inhaling the fresh air on top of the mountain, all of those things does amazing, with amazing benefits for the emotions. So when you're going through the stress, those are aspects you should focus on as well. And if you look at the salah itself, every position in salah has a station of wellness attached to it. So when you're standing in your salah, if you are focused and if you are present in your salah, it can do a lot for the emotions as well. If you're conscious of what you're saying, if you look at every position and how it builds up to the sujood, and we know that the sujood is considered to be the pinnacle of salah, because that's when the believer hands the matter over to Allah. We are lowering ourselves to acknowledge Allah's majesty. And at that point, your emotional distress can be handed over. So doing your salah consciously is a very important part of your emotional wellness program. Sleep patterns, very important. We cannot get through our emotional distress if we are not energized, if we are not replenished. But often we find that it is our emotional distress that prevents us from sleeping. So many people suffer from insomnia, and they tend to replay certain events in their minds at night. So making sure that your environment is conducive for sleeping. The room that you're sleeping in is adequate for your sleeping. Things you look out for is like having too much technology in your room, too much work close to your bed. All of these subtleties that will prevent you from sleeping perfectly. So there are many things that can be done at night to facilitate sleeping. Some of that would be to ensure that you don't consume a large meal 2 hours before you sleep. You avoid energizing sugar-rich items before you sleep. For some people, they might have to bathe before they sleep to relax their muscles. What you busy yourself with. So some people could read some text to enlighten them about emotional wellness. Some could do adhkar or dhikr. Some prefer to apply certain oils to the body. But ultimately, you have to work towards ensuring a good night's sleep. And it differs from each individual. You'll find that the melancholic individuals, they often suffer with insomnia. And it's because the melancholic mind thinks so deeply. And often at night when everything's quiet, the mind works overtime. So these are all aspects that can be worked on. Occupying the thoughts with positive things is very important, because once you give into a negative thought, you go down that line. So melancholic people should be particularly aware about this, that when this happens, self-talk is needed. How do you get yourself back on the road of positivity again? The Prophet ﷺ gave us some advice on how to sleep. He advised that when we go to bed, perform wudu. And what's amazing about wudu is that it is a form of hydrotherapy, healing with water. So we know that we are made up of up to more than 3/4 of our body is water. We live on an earth that is made up of water. No process can function in our body without water. So the water element is very important to us, and it is something that can bring ease to us. It can bring relaxation. It can contribute to emotional wellness when performed correctly. So the wudu made at night can be a form of, can add to the sedative effect that we need for sleeping, calming down the mind. So when you perform wudu consciously, knowing that each limb washes away negativity connected to that limb. So the negativity can be what the hand's done that might worry the mind, what the mouth has said that we're worried about, but performing the wudu cleanses that. So we should look at the wudu as not only a physical cleanse, but it can be a spiritual and an emotional cleanse as well. The Prophet also advised us to recite certain words, the dua of sleep. We be reminded that Allah is the one that keeps our souls and brings it back to us. That's a very important dua, because that reconfirms who's the owner of the situation. Often our minds are busy and concerned about things that we have no control over. So we worry about it anyway. So a lot of the self-talk should guide us towards the tawheed, that knowing that Allah is in charge of the matters and we can only do things up until a certain point, and worrying about something is actually very harmful for us. Elimination is very important. We know that Hippocrates, the father of medicine, spoke about elimination in this quote, that all living organisms, they grow at the expense of the environment, taking from the environment what they need and rejecting what has to be rejected. So taking from the environment will be food and oxygen, but it's also our relationships, how we go about life. But there's also everything has a byproduct. Every activity has a byproduct. When we eat, there's elimination that's needed. When we're talking to people, there's certain emotions that come out. So the ability for us to neutralize negative emotions, to get out the negative emotions, to deal with it, will determine on how well we thrive. So elimination in natural medicine has a holistic context to it. And within TIB, there's various forms of elimination that can take place. So elimination can happen via dietary measures, so what we consume. It can happen via herbal medicine. It can happen via physical therapies like massage, cupping, hydrotherapy, and fasting. But ultimately, all of it can put us in a better space. Because remember that nothing physical that we do, we cannot say it's not attached to the emotions, because when the body feels good, we are able to overcome emotional trauma a bit better. But if the body goes through difficulty and the emotions is there, the two can further cause distress in people. So natural elimination involves keeping the colon clear, detoxing, massage. Massage is also an excellent way to deal with emotional trauma, with the stress. But of course, in a trusting environment, some people don't want the physical touch. And that's something that has to be respected. So ultimately, when it comes to managing emotions, we have to look at it holistically. How do we manage our entire lifestyle? So if we manage all the lifestyle factors well, we will find a place of good health. When it's not managed well, then we lead to disease. And when we're going through any emotional event, think about it in terms of your temperament, what your emotional excesses are in your temperament, and your spiritual personality. So all of us has been endowed with a specific spiritual personality, that if we zone in on it, we will be guided on how to deal with our emotions. And dealing with emotions is multi-factors attached to it. It is what you say to yourself. It is who you seek help from. So it's health professionals, people that are qualified in the field. It is applying the sunnah in your life as often as possible. It is relying on those sterling role models in society, in our history, in our tradition. It is acknowledging that the courtesy of the deen promotes emotional wellness. So good adab for yourself is beneficial for yourself and others. And understanding your spiritual personality means that you should know what works for yourself and for others. And with these few words, I hope that we are able to address any emotional traumatic events in our life by tapping into the Quran and the Sunnah and the professional help out there. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. شكرا.
We say Jazakallah khair, Dr. Mujib, for that very, very insightful presentation again, alhamdulillah. So, alhamdulillah, unfortunately, there isn't time for Q&A today, but Dr. Mujib, if you could just share your, he does the personal consult, if you could just share those details, I did get some requests, inshallah. Otherwise, ladies, we'll see you tomorrow morning, inshallah, where we'll have a different session with Mu'allima Rushan. She will be touching on some of the previous spiritual personalities workshops that we did, just to go over those things, and then a way forward, inshallah, as to from this Ramadan until the next one. We look forward to seeing you all then. We will start at 7 a.m. For those who want to join, we'll just start with Wirda Latif just a little bit before then. If you want to join in, I'll send a message on the group as well. But otherwise, Jazakallah khair so much, Dr. Mujib. I'll share these details on the group chat as well for those ladies who requested. We'll see everyone tomorrow morning. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.